hu yirad mehashamayim lechapareh chatai en hechad ba'olam hazeh sheyagid le'shehu lo chai ki ani ra'iti et po'alo bechaya ve'ani yodea שזה בחסד שני כאן, כמה חסד יש עליי. ישוע חכו, כל דבר לך אדון, אין מספיק מילים שכולי להסביר. ישוע חכו, כל דבר לך אדון, אין מספיק מילים שכולי להסביר. כמה אני מלא תודה שיש לי אותך, שום דבר לא יפריד אותי ממך. Yeshua, Yeshua, Yeshua chachachol, kol devar lecha adon, en mespeak milim shekule lasbir. Yeshua chachachol, kol devar lecha adon, en mespeak milim shekuli laspir. Kama ani malei toda shesh li odcha, shum devar lo yafrid oti mimcha. Yeshua, Yeshua. Welcome to Hebrew Perspectives. So glad you are with me here today. I'm glad to be with you. Glad to have a Savior who brought us a new covenant. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is the new covenant and what that means to believers today. Oftentimes there's misconceptions as to what the new covenant is. And so we're going to be talking about that today. We are in Parasha Eikev, and what we do here, if you're new, you can find that in the description of the YouTube video, and you can also find it on the Hebrew Perspectives page as to what we do. We are following the same pattern that the Messiah and his disciples, his Talmudim, did. And so here we are today. We're going to, and so the song that I was just singing, it basically it just says, he came down from the heavens to atone for my sins. There is none in this world that can tell me that he is not alive, because I have seen his work in my life, and I know that it's only by grace that I am here. So much grace has been given to me. Yeshua, take it all. Everything is for you, Lord. There are not enough words that I can explain how full of thanks that I am that I have you. Nothing will separate me from you. Yeshua, Yeshua. Yes, he is our salvation. And so, before we get too far into this, it's just a reminder for those of you also that are new. Torah, it means instruction in Hebrew. Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. And that is our foundation. That is our foundation. That is our benchmark. That is where when we study things and we read things from, other various sources, we go back to, does it comport with the Word of God? Does it comport with the Torah? And that's what our foundation is. If it doesn't, We don't want it to have anything to do with it in our lives. So let's begin with our Torah blessing. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and has commanded us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Please, Adonai, our God, sweeten the words of Torah in our mouth and in the mouth of your people, the family of Israel. May we and our offspring and offspring of your people, the house of Israel, all of us know your name and study your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to whose people Israel. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, King of the universe, who selected us from all the peoples of the peoples and gave us his Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, giver of the Torah. And as the blessing says, may Torah study always be sweet to you. Again, I'm just so glad to be here with you. Sometimes life can be kind of crazy and things, all over the place. You can tell I have a different background for those of you that haven't noticed. But we basically we ended up moving and still trying to figure out where to put things. All right. And so but yeah, so it's yeah, I don't know if anybody has moved recently or you remember the horrors of moving, but once you get done moving, you always say, I'm never doing this again. Never doing this again is often what we always say. So we are going to be touching a few different books here today. We're going to be in Deuteronomy chapter 7 through, so was it 7 through 12, roughly. And but I wanted to start out with just one little piece from Rabbi Twersky, which I thought was going to be very helpful here today. I always liked a little bit of Musar in our life, a little bit of character development, a little bit of helping us to understand how to walk in this life and how to follow. Let's see here. Forgive me, I marked my spot, but all of a sudden, something is weird here. All right. Sorry, folks. Back with you. Let's see here. This is still not the right thing. Okay, I'm losing a lot of time here doing this. Let's see. Okay. Okay, I don't know what happened here. Okay. Okay, that's like dead radio silence. Station manager is going to come in here and say, move on. All right, so we're going to skip that and we're going to go to Matthew chapter 10. The book of Matthew is it's pretty cool because many people say, and I've said this before, many people say that the book of John is probably the most Hebrew or most Jewish book of the Gospels, but actually it's Matthew because Matthew has a lot of euphemisms. If you understand what a euphemism is something, it's a phrase that is said in a certain culture that only people of that culture would understand. I remember one time I was with some folks and there was a Vietnamese woman in the crowd and I said something to the effect of this man was making goo goo eyes at this girl. And it's something, like in the West here, people understand, he was really looking at her and really liking her. And And the Vietnamese woman, she was just beside herself when Google eyes. What does that mean? Google. It was a euphemism, and most people in the room understood what was going on. But but that particular, so when we read in the book of Matthew and we read about the kingdom of heaven, when he talks about the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven and all that, he's talking essentially about the Torah. He's talking about the commandments. He's talking about following God's commandments, and he's talking about a return to the commandments. Uh, he and John, they did all of that: repentance, immersion in a mikveh in the water. Well, so we're going to go to Matthew chapter 10, and it's one of my favorite chapters. And we are going to read verses 24 and 25, which you'll find a little bit familiar. So it says here, a disciple is not exalted above his Rav. Rav is a short uh, version of rabbi or teacher. A disciple is not exalted above his Rav. And again, I like to point out, it's interesting that only Pharisees were known as rabbis. And so here you have Yeshua using a term that is used by the Pharisees. So, and again, I think Pharisees get a bad rap. It's one of those things that over the years, people have just been pounded into people that Pharisees are the bad guys. They really weren't. Did they do things wrong? Were they not following things the way they should have? Sure, but a lot of people do that. That's hypocrisy happens all over the place. And so it's one of those things. It's like I think they just kind of got a bad rap, and I think this is why. I think this is why the Messiah. I think this is why he rebuked them often, because you rebuke someone that you love, because you want to see them get back on track and do the right thing. And so this is what's going on here. So this is kind of led many scholars to believe that Messiah was probably of one of the 7 Pharisaical sects, or maybe he even created his own Pharisaical sect. But that's for another discussion. A disciple is not exalted above his Rav, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for a disciple to be like his Rav, and for a servant to be like his master. So, as I like to do often, um, is I have a book. Let's see, that's for in a little bit here. I have a book that chronicles many of the instances of Talmud references, rabbinic writings from the Gemara and Mishnah and such, and on the words that the Messiah spoke. And it's called this. What's interesting about this book is that it was just try to hold it out. You've got 2 simultaneous broadcasts going here, but Billerbeck and Strack. This book, it's called A Commentary on the New Testament from the Talmud and Midrash by Strack and Billerbeck. Now, this commentary, you can see how thick it is. This is just the book of Matthew on the number of references of Talmud and Midrash. Now, Midrash, let's see, you could put that in a term the Western mind would understand what a Midrash is. Well, a drosh is like a sermon. And so a Midrash is, have you ever somebody gets up into the pulpit and they say, I'd like to be a fly on the wall in the room and wonder what was going on in the room at that time. And they maybe elaborate a little bit, maybe use some euphemisms that make something to understand. But the point is those are stories to help bring out the drosh, the sermon, to help it better. And so, of course, I'm going to go to the little red tab. This book is not nearly as thick as the book on how to understand women, but it's pretty big, pretty big. And so I was perusing it, and I found something interesting. This is it was a reference to, let's see here. Just as God will one day make Mount Zion habitable again, so too God will one day make the houses of the righteous habitable again. Here's the part. When Allah saw that Rav Hizda's mind was not at rest, he said to him, it is enough for the servant if he is like his master. Okay. Now, if God's house is destroyed, the servant of God should not wonder if his own house is destroyed. In Genesis Rabbah 49:30d. His secret, so the Midrash, God grants to those who fear him and his covenant that he makes it known to them. Psalms 25:14. So, what is this secret? Even another one of these things where when you uh, when the Messiah talks about things that are hidden and being revealed to those who are following him, this is some of the stuff that he was talking about, and he was helping them to understand what these secrets were. And brought so what is the secret? This is circumcision, for he did not reveal it from Adam until the 20th generation, until Abraham appeared, and he gave it to him. Genesis 17:2. I will make my covenant between me and you. God said to him, if you circumcise yourself, you shall receive the secret of Adonai. In what merit? In the merit of circumcision. And then again, you can go to Psalms 25:14. God said to Abraham, it is enough for the servant if he is like his master. Interesting. So he's privy to his master's secrets. Isn't that what we're doing here? Studying Torah because we want to be privy to the secrets. That's what it's all about. And so here's what's interesting. And so this is what leads into a lot of what we're going to be talking about here today. It continues on, and it makes a reference here in the Tanhuma 116b. Then God spoke to Moses, go descend, Exodus 32:7. God said to Moses, people have long caused me to descend from here to see to destruction. Genesis 11:5, Genesis 18:21. So you go to and descend. It is enough for the servant if he is like his master. All right. This is again one of the things that we talk about is the covenant. Now remember, the covenant was given at Mount Sinai, but before the tablets they never made it to the people. All right, this is important to understand this. Moses broke those tablets and they never really received those. So they weren't, it's kind of, I think about the marriage thing part of it. So it's like the marriage contract was not signed, so to speak. It was not ratified. You could say, you could use that word, a Western term, like a law, ratifying a law. But if I'm saying that right, sometimes I'm confused by our own country's rules. But I do think I remember that from high school history. But anyway, but so then that covenant could be rewritten, and there's many midrashic stories about that particular event. How the king finds out his new bride. He hasn't really taken the bride yet, but she's made a mistake by going and carousing with the servants. But she can't help it because she's like the servants. So the people of Israel, what they still had a lot of Egypt in them, and that's where the grace comes in. And then he rewrites the same covenant just on the new tablets. But they're not the same tablets. Remember, the first, according to the rabbis, the first tablets were hewn from the throne of God. Now, the second tablets, Moses had to get out the chisel and the hammer and do it himself. That's pretty rough, All right, so let's see here. I want to make sure. Go and descend. So, okay, so it says, God said to Moses, let it not displease you that I said to you, go descend. For behold, twice, thrice, I have likewise descended from earth, heaven to earth, to see corruption, as it says. God descended to see the city and the tower, Genesis 11:5, that's Babel. Now then, let us descend, in Genesis 11:27. I will go down and see, Genesis 18:21. You too go and descend. It is enough for the servant to be like his master. This proverbial expression is found also in example in several other places, and it lists them all here. I'm not going to list them all for you. Midrash and Tanhuma and various other places. But the point is here is that, like I was saying, many of the things that when we're reading in the Gospels, there's a lot of things that we don't see. just as important it is to see what is being said in the Bible, it's just as important as to what's not being said. Again, we go back to the what was being talked about. It's like when he told his disciples at one point, um, he said, those that sit in the seat of Moses obey what they say, just don't do what they do. In other words, he was pointing out the hypocrisy of the Pharisees and the scribes. And he was pointing that out, but he's saying you still follow the covenant. You just don't break it like they've been doing. So it's important. And as Coffee Porch Ponder has just said, read with understanding. That's part of a daily prayer that we're granted wisdom and insight and understanding. We ask God for that every morning because we want to make sure that we are on the foundation and we are there with that. So, new covenant. All right, new covenant. So, oddly enough, if you go into the Hebrew Bible, I have my Tanakh here, and I go to a very, 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 very familiar passage, a very familiar chapter in Jeremiah 31. Many people know this. This is the only place in the Hebrew Bible where a new covenant is mentioned. Now, there's places, I think, in like Isaiah 42 or 43, God talks about a new thing. Isaiah, you speaking through Isaiah, a new thing. Uh, but anyway, so we're going to just kind of go through 31, Jeremiah 31. Just want to make sure that I'm not missing something here before we move on. One thing that's to remember about the book of Deuteronomy as we're going through, this is the most quoted book by the Messiah. And the theme of it is warning, 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 warning. Make sure you're following the commandments. Do not be led astray into idolatry. Hear, O Israel, today, is remembering the Exodus, remembering the tribulations in the wilderness. Even remember, I think I talked about earlier this week, warning of the lure of prosperity. Don't think that you've done this all on your own. God blessing you. So let's see here. So let's go to Deuteronomy 10 first, real quickly. At the time, the Lord said to me, carve for yourself 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and ascend to me to the mountain, and make a wooden ark for yourself. And I shall inscribe on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets that you smashed, and you shall place them in the ark. All right, so here's something interesting here. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but when we look at things chronologically in the Torah, when we look at things, and the book is designed the way it is for particular reasons. And it's interesting here. I don't know if you noticed it, but there's something here. He says, Moses is reiterating what God said to him. He said, carve for yourself 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and ascend to me to the mountain, and make a wooden ark for yourself. Wait a minute. Okay, hold on a second. Now this is the incident that happened on Yom Kippur. This is the golden calf incident. This is afterwards making new tablets. But wait a minute, he says, and make a wooden ark for yourself. What's being talked about here? What is this wooden ark? Again, this is one of those things as people are like, well, they gloss over it. Maybe they've never seen it before. Maybe never understood that part of it. But if we go to rabbinical writings, we find out that, yes, there were 2 arks. Because the ark was made later on when they built the tabernacle in the wilderness, right? It wasn't made at this point. So what is this ark for? It says ark for yourself. That is the ark where, according to the rabbis, the broken tablets were put in. And then the broken tablets were carried in that ark. That is the ark that went out from this point on to lead the way, to shoo away all the serpents and the scorpions, and lead the way And what is that? That's the broken Messiah. What are that? What the tablets are representative of the broken Messiah, the covenant broken for us. This is, think about this now. Going out there and leading the way, Messiah leading the way, making all things new, right? Okay. Now, so that's interesting, isn't it? All right, so let's go to Jeremiah 31. Let's talk about this new covenant. Let's go through this. Let's see how much time we have. Well, we can go a couple hours today, right? All right, so
This is good stuff.
so thus said Adonai, this people that survived the sword found favor in the wilderness, and I led Israel to its place of tranquility. All right, so you can see how what we were just talking about in Deuteronomy 10, and here we are talking about the same subject. All right, Israel interjects from the distance past. Adonai appeared to me. God continues, and I have loved you with an eternal love. Therefore, I have extended kindness to you. Oh, an eternal love. You got to like that, right? I shall yet rebuild you, and you shall be rebuilt, O maiden of Israel. I'd like to point out right here that if you go to verse number 3 of 31 in the Hebrew, where it talks about maiden, this is one of those arguments that anti-missionaries have, saying basically the words Betula and the word Alma. One means virgin and one means maiden. It's actually they're synonyms. They both can be either or. So you could say virgin of Israel, maiden of Israel. So in other words, the Messiah, they like to say that part, born of a virgin. They said no, I was talking about a maiden, not a virgin, as far as the miracle birth of the Messiah. So again, this is another one of those things. It's like if you run across an anti-missionary and you don't know these things here in the Hebrew, they tend to tear people up. I've seen them tear very well-versed pastors up because they didn't know some of the Hebrew and how to counteract these things. But anyway, that's just a little side note. O maiden of Israel, you yet adorn yourself with drums and go forth in the dance of merrymakers. You will yet plant vineyards in the mountains of Samaria. The planters will plant and redeem. For there will be a day when watchmen will call out on Mount Ephraim. Arise, let us descend to Zion, to the Lord our God. For thus said the Lord, sing, O Jacob, with gladness, exult on the peaks of the nations, announce or laud God, and say, O Adonai, save your people, the remnant of Israel. Behold, I will bring them from the land of the north and gather them from the ends of the earth. Among them will be the blind and the lame, the pregnant and the birthing together. A great congregation will return here. With weeping they will come, and through supplications I will bring them. I will guide them on streams of water, on a direct path in which they will not stumble. For I have been a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. Hear the words of the Lord, O nations, related in the distant islands, and say, the one who scattered Israel, he shall gather him in and guard him as the shepherd guards his flock. For Adonai will have redeemed Jacob and delivered him from the hand mightier than he. And they will come and sing joyously in the height of Zion. They will stream to Hashem's bounty upon grain, upon wine, upon oil, and upon your sheep and cattle. And then their soul shall be like a well-watered garden. They shall not continue to agonize anymore. Then the maiden, again, here's that word again, shall rejoice with dance. This is important. Rejoice with dance. We just had, I think I pointed out, we had just had Tu B'Av, which is the 15th of Av, which is a very joyous celebration among the Jewish people. In antiquity, the women would borrow linen garments. The single unmarried women would put on plain linen garments and go out into the field and dance. And the young unmarried men would go out and find a bride out in the field. and it was just a beautiful celebration. The reason why they would all wear the same linen was so that no one would, you know, one girl's richer than the other or something. That just had to be this fine true love out in the field. So anyway, then the maiden shall rejoice with dance, and the young men and old men will rejoice together. I shall transform their mourning into joy, and I shall comfort them and gladden them for their grief. I shall satisfy the desire of the Kohanim, that's the priests, with the fat of offerings, and my people will be sated with my bounty, the word of the Lord. Thus said Adonai, a voice is heard on high, wailing, bitter weeping. Rachel weeps for her children. She refuses to be consoled for her children, for they are gone. Now remember, one of the reasons why Rachel was buried on the roadside is because um, they knew at one point, or God in his infinite wisdom knew at one point that the people would fall. And yeah, this is an interesting paradox about things. You know, an all-knowing God knows things, but for the point is many times we fall in order that we can be risen up better than we were before. You know, the rabbis talk about the incident of the golden calf, that it was almost engineered by God in order to make it happen so that the people would have a better love for the covenant when they actually received it. Uh, and then of course the ordeal that Aaron went through, he ended up being a man of peace. You know, a great deal. You know, many people in today's world, what Aaron went through, they would have stuck in a knife in him, and they would have been, he's done. No, he can never come back from creating a golden calf and having people worship idolatry. You know what I'm saying? But in God's infinite wisdom, that was part of the plan. That was part of the plan. Thus said Adonai, restrain your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears, for there is a reward for your accomplishment, the word of Adonai, and they will return from the enemy's land. There is hope for your future, the word of Adonai, and your children will return to their border. All right. Here's where this just starts getting a little interesting. All right. So remember, we have a concept of born again is, for some reason, a lot of folks seem to think that born again is a new concept that came about in the Gospels. It's really not. It's throughout rabbinic writings for thousands of years. New creature, new creation, living water, going down in the mikveh, born again, born anew, a new child. Again, and so what's the point of all that? The point is that is when you're born again, you are still who you are. You're just given a new lease on life. There's a euphemism from the West if you want it. If you want to go, a new lease on life. You know, it's like we're still the same person. And so when it's interesting that many people, when they when there's a tradition that when converts come in, let's say a couple comes in, they want to they take on a name change, and then oftentimes what happens is that couple, they renew their wedding vows. They didn't stop being married, they just renewed their vows because that's and that's, I'm trying to find, I'm having trouble with the words right there, but they want to start out brand new. There's still the marriage hasn't changed. You know, it wasn't, we got divorced, we came back again. It, thing is that work kind of works too if you think about it. All right, so because where is it? It is Isaiah. Isaiah talks about Israel, or Judah and his sister Israel, serving them with a divorce. You know, but taking them back on with the new covenant. So why did the Messiah die? The atonement for our sins, right? Okay, on a macro level, all right, atoning for the sins of the world, paving the way for us to be able to, um, you know, I think it was it last week. I asked a question, you know, or ask somebody, it's like, why is it? Oh, would you ask somebody, why did he do it? Oh, so we could go to heaven. Oh, I know what it was. I was talking with a group of men just recently, and I was reiterating a story about how I was talking to someone, and they were saying to the effect that they don't read the Old Testament. They don't need it. And I was like, that's our foundation. That's where everything else came from. That's where the pattern is. That's where we find the pattern. You follow the pattern, the glory will fall. But yeah, to do that, it's kind of rough. Well, let me move on. I'm starting to chase and scatter here. Okay, all right. So we were talking about renewing couple. The couple renew their wedding vows. They're a new couple. You go down and you go into the waters of the mikveh, and again, if you peruse rabbinical writings, you'll find that the water for the mikveh needs to be, as they quote, living water. All right. So there's another phrase that wasn't new. Now, I'm not saying that the Messiah, people like, wow, he came up with some new things. I'm not downgrading what he was doing. He was basically bringing out things that people already knew. Okay. So, living water, a new creation, a new person. Behold, I make all things new. All right. So the Messiah, ultimately, what he was doing was renewing the covenant. Okay. Just like we were just pointing out, he's reiterating, Moses is talking to them back in Deuteronomy chapter 10. He's talking about, and I wrote the same words on the new tablets. It's a renewed covenant. That's why Yom Kippur is known as the day of renewed covenant. Yeah, it's called renewed covenant. And you know what else it is? The most holy day on the Jewish calendar. Renewed covenant. Yeah. All right. So it makes sense, doesn't it? So that's why the Messiah ultimately, on a huge level, was to renew things, to make all things new, just to start again, to here's what's interesting about this is when he died for us, when he completed his mission, it released something into the world spiritually that causes people to pursue Torah. Now, I want you to think about it. In the last 20 years, before, say, more than 20 years ago, those of you can play this game here that I'm not necessarily a game, but you know what I'm saying. 20 years ago, did you even hear the word Torah? I did, but I'm just saying that it seems to be more prominent, seems to be coming out a whole lot more, right? All of a sudden, people now are pursuing Torah. They're looking to get back to the foundation. Everything is so scattered and so all over the place. So, and it's the Spirit of God is the Torah. And so people that stray from the Torah, you have to start asking the question, do you have the Holy Spirit? That's a scary thought, isn't it? That's why I get kind of leery when people are like, God told me to do this. Over the centuries and the millennia, or whatever, there's people that have come and gone and have said, God told me this, but guess what? It wasn't based on the Torah. Now, verse number 17. I have indeed heard Ephraim moaning. You have chastised me, and I have become chastened. Like an untrained calf, bring me back to you, and I shall return. For you are Hashem, my God. Now remember, Ephraim, this point here, is talking about the northern kingdom of Israel. For after my returning, I regretted, and after my being made aware of my sinfulness, What? Wait a minute. What is the definition of sin? Again, I've asked this question before. We talk about this a lot. People don't understand. I can answer that question. What is the definition of sin? I can answer it in one word: lawlessness. I think we talked about this last week. And that's what the Messiah, he says, in the end days, lawlessness will increase. So you're going to have a group of people that they're finding Torah, they're wanting to return to the foundation, and then you're also going to have an increased amount of people going away from it. Lawlessness. Sin is transgression of God's law. That's basically what that means. Okay. Here is some sincere teshuvah going on from Ephraim. We sinned. We went away from the law of God. Now we want to come back. We want to be made new. All right. I slapped my thigh in anguish. I was ashamed and also humiliated, for I bore the disgrace of my youth. Is Ephraim my favorite son, or a delightful child, that whenever I speak of him, I remember him more and more? Therefore, my inner self yearns for him. I will surely take pity on him. The word of Adonai. Here's where it starts getting even more interesting. All right. Make road markers for yourself. Set up landmarks for yourself. Set the thoughts of your heart upon the road, the route that you are walking. Return, O maiden of Israel. There it is again. Return to these cities of yours. How long will you slip away, O wayward daughter? For Adonai has created something new in the world. Oh. Created something new in the world. What is that? Hold this part right here. That the woman will court the man. What does that mean? That means, just like we were talking about, that people will pursue Torah. Remember, the Torah is, as the rabbis say, God written down for us. We will pursue. Okay. Have you ever seen a Jewish wedding? If you haven't, go onto YouTube, go to like Itzik Orlov. He sings at these weddings. Okay. These weddings are magnificent. Okay. They're just, some of them are just powerfully, powerfully wonderful. There is a point in many of these weddings, many traditions that go many years back, where the woman walks around the man. That tradition comes from right here in Jeremiah 31 and verse 21. The woman walking around the man. We will pursue God. Verse 22, thus said Adonai, Master of legions, God of Israel, people will again say, this thing in the land of Judah and in its cities, when I return their captivity, may Adonai bless you, O abode of righteousness, O holy mountain. Judah will dwell in it and its cities together, plowmen and those who travel with the herd, for I have quenched the thirsty soul and have replenished every distraught soul. For those of you that are always, I know that some people watch these things and I get comments, messages. Basically, let me say it again. Hebrew, Israelite, Jew, these are all synonymous terms. Israel and Judah, they were separate kingdoms at this time, but they were still ultimately Judah. Why Judah? Because Judah is the kingship. Who is the king of the Jews? All right. A descendant in the line of Judah. That's why we do that, right? So, verse 25, because of this vision, when I woke up after I saw it, my sleep was pleasant to me. Behold, days are coming, the word of Adonai, when I shall sow the house of Israel and the house of Judah, the seed of man and the seed of animal. And it shall be that just as I was diligent concerning them to uproot, to smash, to destroy, to annihilate, and to bring evil, so will I be diligent concerning them to build and to plant. The word of Adonai. In those days it will no longer be said, the fathers ate sour grapes, but the teeth of the sons are set on edge. Rather, every man will die for his own sin, and the man who eats the sour grapes, his own teeth will be set on edge. Behold, days are coming, the word of Adonai, when I will seal a new covenant. Again, this is the only place in the Hebrew Bible where this is said. With the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not like the covenant that I sealed with their forefathers on the day that I took hold of their hand to take them out of the land of Egypt, for they abrogated my covenant, although I became their master, the word of Adonai. So what's this saying right here? It's basically, remember the word abrogated. Abrogated is very similar because what does the Messiah say? He says, I have not come to destroy or abrogate the law, but I've come to fulfill it. All right. What is this fulfillment? Is renewing it, right? Okay. So they let's see here. And let me continue. Oh, verse 32. For this is the covenant that I shall seal with the house of Israel after those days, the word of Adonai. I will place my Torah within them, and I will write it onto their heart. I will be a God for them, and they will be a people for me. They will no longer teach each man his fellow, each man his brother, saying, Know Adonai, for all of them will know me, from their smallest to their greatest, the word of Adonai, when I will forgive their iniquity and will no longer recall their sin. Amazing, isn't it? It's the same covenant, it's just being renewed. Why is that? Because a covenant from God is unchangeable and unbreakable. Here's a problem many people have today. Many people, they talk about things that seem like that allude to maybe God changes his mind or changes the way he does things, or God doesn't change. The house of Israel is the house of Israel. Um, you know what? I forgot to. So, and I ran a cut. So when I was talking about the whole thing about the woman going around the man at the wedding, I forgot something here. So in Yevamot 62b, the Gemara cites statements about marriage in general. Rabbi Tanhum said that Rabbi Hanalai said, any man who does not have a wife is left without joy, without blessing, without goodness. I want you to think about that very carefully right there. When we sin, what does that position put God in? We go away from following him. It's like he doesn't have a wife. So what is this saying? It's saying he is without joy, as it is written in Deuteronomy 14:26, and you shall rejoice, you and your household, which indicates that a man is in a joyful state only when he is with his household, for example, his wife. He is without blessing, as is written in Ezekiel 44:30, to cause a blessing to rest in your house, which indicates that blessing comes through one's house, one's wife. He is without goodness, as it is written in Genesis 2:18. It is not good that man should be alone or without a wife. Now, and this is why it's a commandment for men to be married, because for one of the reasons why it was originally done was because you had to be able, on the 3 pilgrimage festivals, you had to go and you had to redeem your firstborn son. So I'm thinking, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about how Paul never got married, and it was thinking out loud, but it was one of these things. It's like, what was the thorn in his flesh? Was it because he wasn't able to? So remember, the temple was still available at that time. Okay, it wasn't destroyed till a little while after he had gone away. So he would have been able to go to each of the pilgrimage festivals, but he would not have been able to redeem a firstborn son. I'm thinking maybe this kind of, and maybe that was maybe that was the thorn in his side. Maybe that's what kind of, I don't know. I'm thinking out loud. That's something for folks to think about. But again, that's an opinion. All right. I'll tell you when it's opinion, and I'll tell you what I'm reading from. All right. Just so you know. All right. So in the West, in the land of Israel, it's Eretz Israel, they say, one who lives without a wife is left without Torah. Ooh. And without a wall of protection. He is without Torah, as it is written, it is that I have no help in me, and that sound wisdom is driven from me in Job 6:13. Ooh, ooh, yeah. Remember what happened to Job? Remember what she said? Indicating that one who does not have a wife lacks sound wisdom. For example, the Torah. He is without a wall, as it is written, a woman shall go round a man. Genesis or Jeremiah 31:21, similar to a protective wall. All right. So I come back around to um, the woman pursuing the man. Isn't that interesting? What jumped out to me here when I was reading this? You know, again, so it was we man. It's not good for man to be alone. She was made to be a helpmeet. I've talked about this before. And, basically, my wife is the one that helps me. She's like, it's time for you to go study some Torah. Maybe I'm a little bit unruly or whatever. Just I should, you know, go take some time to pray. Whatever it may be, she's the one that's helping to steer me in a way, to steer me in the right direction. So you understand how important it is to have a wife. Now, let's see here. Rabbi Bar Allah said, one who does not have a wife is left without peace, as it is written, and you shall know that your tent is in peace, and you shall visit your habitation and shall miss nothing. Job 5:24. This indicates that a man has peace only when he has a tent, or for example, a wife. On the same verse, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, whoever knows that his wife fears heaven and she desires him and he does not visit her, for example, you know, he knows her, that's a PG version, is called a sinner, as it is stated, and you shall know that your tent is in peace and you shall visit your habitation. Uh, so they basically come right down to it. It's an obligation to visit your wife in your tent, in her ohel. The the tent, the Hebrew word for tent is ohel. And this is why every female needs to go back to the foundation of what it's like to have a tent of peace. And that would be to go back to the original, go back to Sarah. All right. If anything, if you want, and here's a little side thing. If you want some help in life, remember to pray in your daily prayer for you and your wife, for those of you that are married, to be like Abraham and Sarah. What were Abraham and Sarah? They followed God's commandments. She helped Abraham to follow God's commandments. Did they make mistakes? Yes, they did. That's why the examples are in there for us to learn. So don't go running off and getting an extra wife. But they were always returning back to what they were supposed to be. They did teshuvah. They went back to what God was commanding them. And the biggest thing that they did, what Abraham and Sarah did, was that they invited passersby, guests, to come into their tent, and they would feed them and they would tell them of the one and only true God. The one and only true God. May the Lord bless you and keep you and guard you. May the Lord shine his countenance upon you and be gracious to you. May God turn his countenance toward you and grant you peace. Yeshua chachako, kol devar lecha adon, and mespeak milim shekule laspir. Yeshua chachako.